On episode 231 of the 40 Plus Fitness podcast, we meet Joanna Garzilli and discuss her book, Big Miracles. You can find the full show notes for this episode at 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/231. Have you decided you're ready to make a change? To reclaim your health and fitness? The 40 Plus Fitness podcast is here for you. I'm your host, Alan Meisner. I'm an NSAM certified personal trainer with a specialization in corrective exercise and fitness nutrition. Let me be your coach as you find your way on your health and fitness journey. All right, let's go. Joanna Garzilli is a spiritual success coach and motivational speaker. Over the past 20 years, she has given intuitive guidance to business leaders, entrepreneurs, and celebrities. She lives in Los Angeles with her husband, Nick, and their son, Dominic. So, Joanna, welcome to 40 Plus Fitness.
Thank you so much, Alan. It's wonderful to be with you today.
You know, as I kind of went through your book, Big Miracles, it's not a traditional health and fitness book, but I think so many people fail to kind of recognize that health and fitness is not just a physical thing that you go out and do. You really kind of have to have your mind and your spirit kind of aligned to make these things happen. You can't just sit there and will it to happen per se, but there's a balance between doing the work and actually having the right mindset to make these things happen for you.
Absolutely. It's a dance. I like to think of, from the spiritual standpoint, that it's spiritual fitness. And in terms of reaching health goals, there's that, when I say a dance, there's the back and forth between sometimes really going inwards, meditating, getting aware of what one's inner issues are emotionally, mentally, and how that stops one showing up physically or making the wrong food choice. And then also when one is actually physically exercising, how transformational and meditative that can be. I have recently come across something that I am absolutely in love with. It's called precision running. And for me, it's been phenomenal. My husband comes from a background of track and field and doing running, but growing up in England, that wasn't something that was there. So I never thought of myself naturally as a runner, but it's been such a profound experience and helped me grow in so many ways spiritually when I show up for that class.
I did a good bit of running when I was younger and would do the marathons. And that's one of the things that I kind of found is, well, the first thing that I was actually very surprised was how social running was, because I had not expected that when I was training solo. But then I would go on these runs, very long runs, and just be able to connect with people for, a good long time, because we weren't all out there to just beat somebody else. We were actually all out there just really to enjoy what we were doing, and being out, and in many cases in some beautiful locations really kind of made it all that much better. But I really like that you touched on that word awareness, because really these rules are kind of a guide to keep you aware, to keep you kind of engaged with your progress and to understanding what's going on in your body, what's going on in your mind, so that you are actually moving forward and not letting things pull you back.
Yeah, the 11 rules really support someone in creating a mind, body, spirit connection. Because again, if we just focus on one area, if we just work on the physical, or we just focus on the mental, or we're just meditating and with our head in the clouds and the spiritual, we're not going to get to the outcomes that we want for any area of our life. And I know that for myself, from my own experience, when I would turn my focus to just one of those areas. I think that one can put a little bit of energy and focus towards one and then rotate them, sort of juggle them. But if one thinks, oh, well, I'm just going to put my attention here and here only for the long haul, that does not work out well in creating the results one wants.
I can definitely tell you've read my story, because that's where I really found myself at one point. And there was a quote in your book that I really want to kind of recite, because it kind of pulled this all together for me to understand that, yeah, this was a good book for me. And it said, okay, to free yourself of negative thoughts and feelings, you must be honest with yourself about them. And I think that was kind of my moment of realization and clarity when I was going through my journey, was that I had a lot of limiting beliefs. I had a lot of things that were holding me back. And until I was willing to kind of accept that those were there, I really didn't have a way forward.
Yeah, the limiting beliefs is a big one in terms of what someone feels that they can do. And again, this idea of, I suppose, a limiting belief is something that it's an opportunity to learn, right? It's an opportunity to grow. And whatever the challenge that we set for ourselves, whether it's generating more income, whether it is picking up a new hobby, doing something one's never done before. Limiting belief for me, one of the things that I had adopted from, bless my mother, was when I used to, as a kid, around 4 or 5 years old, I would go to ballet classes. I love doing these ballet classes. I don't have a natural ballet dancer's physique, but it was so fun for me. And I remember we had this performance at the theater. It was a gorgeous theater, and I had a fabulous outfit to wear. And I was so happy, so proud to be on stage and part of that team of dancers, and looking down into the audience, seeing my mom, seeing her best friend. Then my mom said to me afterwards, and I guess she didn't realize the ramifications of what would happen from that, but she said, "Oh, I laughed with Auntie Linda all the way through. You looked like an elephant on stage." And that was absolutely mortifying for me. So it carried through to later on in life, where I didn't go, whenever I fast forward in time to 17 years old, one of my best friends who'd gone to stage school doing dance, and she took me to this place called Pineapple Studios. I don't think it's around anymore, but it was like the hip, cool place to go dance in Covent Garden in London. And I remember going and joining her in a class, but I had so much of that, right, that limiting belief stuff of I dance like an elephant, that even though I was there and I could learn and I was with really good instructors, it was something that really held me back. The other thing was that I wasn't taken into consideration was that girlfriend of mine, she was at stage school dancing all the time, 5 days a week, and I wasn't. So there was sort of a distortion there for me. But I made myself break through that limiting belief and overcome that shame and that fear by when my husband dared me to audition for Laker Girls. It was absolutely terrifying for me, but it helped me break through on so many levels. Financial, emotional, my confidence levels went up so much because I did something that I never thought I could do. So to do that at 40, I was 40 years old when I did that. When the show aired, they were like, Joanna, a 40-year-old mother of a 3-year-old and trying out for the Laker Girls. And it was just, my husband was on the floor laughing his head off. But I think it was just disbelief. He couldn't believe it because I was the only person on that show that couldn't dance and somehow made it on there. My story was an inspiration. And so I think sometimes, right, we set ourselves certain goals or health challenges, things to do to break through that mean so much more than the result or whether we win gold.
Yeah. And you have the dream big piece is one of your rules. We'll get to that because I do want to go through kind of each of the 11 at a very high level. The value of the book, and I can't say this enough, the book is called Big Miracles, but each of these 11 rules, you don't just say, here's a rule and here's a couple paragraphs. You actually provide tools and guidance and actually templates in many cases to kind of help walk us through how to actually apply that rule. So this is not just a book of here's 11 rules. This is a how-to manual for kind of re-engaging with yourself, re-engaging with who you are and who you could be, and bridging the gap between those two. So let's take that step through each of the 11 rules just briefly and just have that conversation.
And I thank you for acknowledging that it's more than just the rules, because I had to dig extremely deep to go and clarify how have all these things I've done, which a lot of the time with these rules, it's something that happens on an intangible level. And then to be able to help someone understand how step by step to get deep into that rule and how it can make a positive impact.
Absolutely.
Some of us are more feeling, some of us are more on a mental plane, some of us are very much about being physical and in our bodies. Some people, right, some of us have issues in terms of perhaps they've gone through abuse, and whether it's emotional or physical, and that idea of what certain tools that will maybe work for one person don't work for someone else. So, or they would be harder to get into. So I really wanted to make sure it was well-rounded and would be for someone of all ages and from any background. These rules could be universal and valuable for all.
And I think you hit that. And that's one of kind of the cool things as we have this conversation is, as I've worked with folks to try to help them move through the path that I've gone, there's a lot of parallels between the approaches that I've developed with my clients and your rules. So again, I do think it's more than just kind of a rule. It really is guidance to kind of help someone manage the process. So the first rule you have is align with the spirit. Could you take a little bit of time to talk through that?
Yeah, aligning with spirit. So oftentimes people will say to me, well, how do I know I'm aligned or misaligned? Another way of looking at that is, how am I in tune with my intuition or disconnected? And there's a very simple way to do that. And that is, you either feel good or you feel bad. That's in its most simplistic form. And what I do with my coaching clients, again, to keep it simple, is ask them what's working, what isn't working, and why. Because that helps a person to identify where they feel good or where they feel bad, right? If someone ends up going on a little bit of a binge on the weekend, drinking too much, having maybe a little bit too much sugar, and they get to Monday morning and you check and you go, how do I feel? Do I feel good or do I feel bad? Okay, I feel bad right now. Okay, well, what wasn't working for you? Okay, well, maybe it's that I should have eaten that extra sugar. Normally it's very simple, but people, it's something, there's this disconnect of where they don't allow themselves to be honest with themselves or feel into the issue. I mean, I did that for the longest time. And from looking at your journey through where you shared through your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, in my 20s, I was a size 12. And I was not eating healthily. And partly it was I didn't know how. I really didn't have like the extra knowledge. That's when organic was really just starting to become a trend, but it was still very niche where I was in London. And all I know is that the misalignment for me was I was getting nosebleeds on a regular basis and I couldn't figure out quite what was happening. It was terrifying. And when I finally stopped being angry and writing in my journal, why is this happening to me? Or I don't understand. And getting calm, getting quiet and saying, Spirit, what do I need to know? What do I need to do to stop these nosebleeds? And what then got revealed to me when I allowed myself to feel, instead of suppressing my feelings with another croissant with strawberry jam and another cappuccino and some cake in the afternoon, I wasn't happy in my relationship. I just didn't feel fulfilled in it. And I feel that the person I was with at the time, there was a codependency that was there. And I just didn't know how to process that or how to get out of that relationship, because I was so scared that if I ended that relationship, that no one would ever want to be with me again. So that was a crazy limiting belief that was there. And so that's how I know that I ballooned in my weight, because I was denying my emotions. But as soon as I got really clear in that feeling, I dropped a massive amount of that weight. Now I'm healthier and better shape in my 40s than I am in my 20s. I'm a size 6 now. And it's not just about the size, it's the energy levels as well. And thankfully, my husband and I have been married for almost 11 years now. So I've managed to overcome a lot of these things. But it started with being able to just focus on that. Am I aligned? Am I misaligned? And this isn't something we do once and that's it. Before you go to sleep, when you wake up in the morning, check in and ask yourself, do I feel good? Do I feel bad? Because that will help you then identify, oh, hang on a minute, that conversation I had with, say, my brother last night, actually it really rattled me and I didn't take the time to clear that. And then carrying that into the next day and into the week ahead, then every other action you take doesn't go the way that you want, because there's that schism in your energy field. And
I think the practical tool that you mentioned here that I really want to go back to for just a second is the journal, because I'm a big fan of journaling to just kind of collect those thoughts, those feelings, those impressions, because many times, because we're not completely aware of what's going on in the moment, it takes a little while to start seeing those patterns to tell us exactly why what's going on in our lives is going on.
Absolutely. The patterns are so subtle. And that's why over the years of meditation, I think even just a mindful minute can be so powerful. And it's as simple as center, ground, connect. If we're centered in our hearts, if we feel grounded in our body and connected to our environment, and we connect up to spirit. When I say spirit, to a higher intelligence, to ideas, to inspiration. And from that, all of that comes together, which then would lead into rule 2, be a spiritual vehicle. From there, there's this peace, this calm that comes that, yes, anything is possible. What you're saying with the journaling, one of the things I wrote today, and again, it's not something new, but there's this subtle new level of awareness, was I wrote, anything is possible if I believe. I was like, oh, yes, anything is possible if I believe. And right, because what it meant to me yesterday is something different from the level of spiritual awakening I have today. I used to think years ago we have one spiritual awakening and that's it. I feel like we have this ongoing series of spiritual awakenings, and some are more dramatic than others. But if we become more aware of those subtle energies and take our thoughts out of our head and put it onto the page, it helps us really get a sense of those blind spots, and it creates space to open up and to think in a way that is more productive rather than coming from a place of reaction and feeling overwhelmed.
And so, yeah, we kind of get through those first 2 rules of kind of aligning with the spirit, with our spirit, or with spirit. And then we kind of now are going to accept that, okay, now we're going to be this spiritual vehicle, and that's going to help us get past a lot of things that would limit us and stop us. And then I like the 3rd rule because it uses a word that I use on this podcast. Pretty much, if I don't use it every other episode, I use it quite a bit, is the word commit. And in your case, the rule is commit to your breakthrough.
Absolutely. Without commitment, nothing happens, right? Because it's all very well and good saying, I'm going to go and do this thing, and then one doesn't do it. And I think it's important. What I found has worked for me is to commit and then also to surrender as well in terms of how I'm going to show up. So I'll focus on the end result that I want to create. And then I just come back to, for example, if I commit to something and then I don't follow through, I go back to the idea of what's working here. Why didn't I show up? And then what have I got to do to recommit? I see people break their commitments a lot. Someone, when the new year comes, someone says, oh, I'm going to stop drinking alcohol. I'm going to stop doing caffeine. I'm going to stop having so much bread. And then they fall off the wagon, right? And so I think we have to give ourselves permission to recommit to things as well. Today, I was scheduled to go and do precision running, but my son wasn't feeling well. And so now I had to cancel that. But all being well and good, I will be running tomorrow morning.
Well, but you're faced with a special circumstance. In a lot of cases, if like with me being an empty nester, I don't have a lot of other obligations. And so when I kind of look at commitment from my vantage point where I am, I look at it from this perspective of if I have a really good vision of what I'm committing to, and I have a why, which is my family, then I have the same emotional tie to that as I did when I got married. I'm making that level of commitment to myself. And then I break that down to say, if, like the going to the gym or doing a workout is, if you told your spouse that you were going to pick them up at the airport at 5:00 in the morning, guess where you're going to be?
Oh, absolutely.
Now, you had a child, and that's a special circumstance. So complete buy on that one. But if the excuse is not bigger than the commitment, then you need to reevaluate.
Well, at one point a few years back, I was working with a coach who said, I don't care what you're doing or if your child's sick or whatever's going on, if you don't show up for, whatever that specific thing was, it was more based around business, then that means that you're not really committed, because nothing should get in the way. And I remember being horrified by that. I think at that point, that was a turning point, a realization for me that although I had learned a lot of good stuff from that person, that we had different values that, again, sort of similar to you, for me, family comes first and is my most important core values.
And back when I was 37, if I were your coach back then, I probably would have said the same thing. If you're committed to your career, then you go where you're supposed to go. You do what you're supposed to do, and you just make it work. But like I said, sitting on the beach that day and recognizing that what I had given up in relationship, what I had given up in health, and what I'd given up spiritually, those sacrifices weren't worth it in the long term. And if I didn't balance myself back out, this really wasn't going to work out for me long term.
I think commitment as well. It's what I learned for myself is to not wait for stuff to happen. If you make the commitment to do something, then I really feel that all the things that you need to have that breakthrough, they occur, they align. And because one is, from an energy standpoint, one is saying, yes, I'm putting my focus here. And then that opens everything up, plus more than is desired.
Now, the next one's really important for a lot of people because they really struggle with this, and it's forgive mistakes.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of times where I had mentally beaten myself up for making mistakes, and that contributed to a lot of emotional eating for me to suppress those feelings. And I see anyone that struggles to really show up for their health and fitness is oftentimes there's punishment there. And there's enough misunderstanding or criticism from people outside of ourselves. And so to criticize oneself as well is so abusive. It's such a terrible thing to do. And so that idea of forgiving oneself for mistakes really lifts that heaviness at the energy level. But the other way that I like to look at it is this idea of what if mistakes and miracles waiting to happen. Sometimes we need to go through a certain thing to have a certain learning experience that helps us show up more fully, to be even more committed, to really maybe have even more of a profound breakthrough than we would have thought possible. And one of my clients, actually, she is extremely sensitive. She's very sensitive from an energy standpoint, and also with foods as well. Just she's sensitive to everything. And for her, she said to me, Joanna, I just wish I wasn't so sensitive. I can't bear being so sensitive. And she said, I feel so bad when I need to go and show up at something for the school for my kids, or my husband needing me for something for work. And I just don't have the energy. I just feel like I can't do it. I feel so awful. And the thing is that my sense that I felt for her was that actually that sensitivity means that she has taken really good care of her body. She knows that she needs to nap, she needs to slow down, or she needs to eat super clean. And so in terms of her long-term health, I think she said, well, other people seem to be able to just eat whatever, or they have all this energy. But how many times have we seen someone who's trucking along, seems like they're doing great, and suddenly they end up really sick in hospital, or with a severe cancer, or a couple of people that I know from back in the day in London just drop dead in their early 40s because they have supposedly this constitution, but they're not taking care of themselves. So sometimes those idea of mistakes or, there's something wrong with me, there is that silver lining.
Yeah, when we kind of get into that comparison, I kind of think of it in terms of, you can look at the top of the water in a duck and it's all calm and looks just really nice, but underneath that duck is kicking like heck. And you just don't see that part of it to realize what that duck is doing to stay on top of the water. It just seems like it's so easy for them. So you never have the full picture of what someone else is going through to really kind of do that fair comparison. And I just really like how you have the concept of mistakes can be a gift as an opportunity. And like you said, an opportunity to be a miracle of teaching you a lesson so that you don't make the bigger mistake later. You don't make the mistake that is the one that you can't get past. And so I think, discovering at 37 that I needed to make some changes, and it took me a while to figure out the path, but just kind of figuring that out was really, if I'd sat there and beat myself up a whole lot about it, I really wouldn't have gotten to the point where I was moving forward and figuring this stuff out. So I think it really is nice to think of this in those terms of, these mistakes and things that go wrong, they're an opportunity for you to learn more about yourself.
One of the things that really stood out to me in my life was My mum's mum she had colon cancer and she died at 78, and she loved sugar. And she ended up being, when she was younger, I'd seen photos of her. She was very, very slim. But from the point always when I knew her in my life, she was big. She was a big lady, absolutely gorgeous. And I remember being with her leading up to when she died. And just, I think at that point, I didn't take things seriously enough, but watching her go through that really at some level made me aware of it's so important that we take care of ourselves and we don't sort of wait till we hit that critical point. I suppose for me, it's a blessing that I put on weight very easily. I put it on fast and I lose it pretty fast. But to really just to make sure to, I look at myself and I listen to myself, and then I just try and do everything I can to be kind to myself. I mean, I'll admit I'm not kind to myself fully every day on a daily basis, but I have a little card in my bathroom that says, when you look in the mirror, say to yourself that you love yourself. Or I'll look in the mirror and say, I'm a miracle worker. And that just immediately lifts my energy and makes me feel good and kicks in that energy to go, take care of yourself, because we have to take care of ourselves. Because sometimes if we're waiting for someone else to take care of us, a lot of that time that it's not that other people don't want to take care of us, but I think just in today's society, people are more and more overwhelmed. They've just got so much on their plates, and so we have to put ourselves first. It's not a selfish thing.
Now, the next one is one that I need to staple to my forehead, is to live without ego. And the reason I kind of say that is in the book you talk about embracing the truth. And I've had situations where trying to remember that I'm now, 51, I have to adjust how I do things, and I have to accept certain truths of that I'm not 29 anymore. And I'm not going to be able to just throw that weight around the way that I used to. I have to be a little bit smarter about it. So I really do like this one. Can you take a little bit of time to talk about living without ego? And then I think the contrast to that is the next one, which is believe in your ability. So to me, those are kind of the guardrails that are going to keep us in the middle of this road.
So a little bit of ego, I think, is a healthy thing in that it helps us identify ourselves, to see our strengths, to understand better who we are, and that to be able to let ourselves shine and to have the courage to speak up about certain things or to pursue certain dreams. The unevolved ego is the issue when it's, I already know that. Well, maybe you know it, but are you putting it to practice in your life? And so that unevolved ego is a brutal thing because it stops one from taking action. And I believe a large component of, again, reaching one's idea of ultimate success is to be able to say, okay, I'm going to put aside all the things that I think I know, and I'm going to show up with a beginner's mind. And I'm going to let myself just start from scratch to be able to see things with new eyes, because that awareness then helps us really be in tune with ourselves, who we are and what our goals are. And for example, if someone has strong career goals, there is a certain level of physical fitness that is required. And I'm really going through that experience right now. We have another company that is launching, which is a personal rapid transit company. And so we're going to be building an infrastructure where we're going to be traveling very fast, initially at 400 miles per hour, eventually 4,000 miles per hour. And I'm finding that the mental strength that is required and the focus to ground this vision fully through the business plan we have and now where we are launching that means that my physical fitness is so important that I really pace myself. And so I'm finding that sometimes I'll cycle through different types of workouts depending on where I'm at and what I'm doing in business. So a lot of the time, for example, when I was writing Big Miracles, I was primarily doing walks and I was doing yoga. And then after I finished writing the book, when I was in the editing phase, I went into doing hot yoga and started adding in HIIT workouts. And then when we moved back to Los Angeles, I went primarily back to yoga And then when I really started to get into this transport company and doing that, now all my attention has gone to running. So it's, the ego, I find, is that thing that there is a guiding voice in there that if one listens, it can really tell you the right thing to do. If one doesn't listen to one's intuition, that's when that inner critical voice gets stronger. That's when the ego gets out of control. So again, going back to listening and getting quiet with things, then I find one can cycle through and really honor what one's body wants, because I really believe our body's always speaking to us in conjunction with our mind and our spirit. And then what you were saying about how rule 5 connects to rule 6, and rule 6, believe in your ability, is when I start to feel fear come up, or I go, how am I going to do this? Or how's this all going to work out? Or how are we going to do like that next level of fundraising for the business? That is when I turn to the gym. That is when I go, I'm not going to try and work this out. I'm just going to go and exercise, and I'm going to clear those thoughts. And then I can come back to the computer. I can come back to the team that I'm working with and feel absolutely focused and clear, and know that it's not if, it's just when. And it's about closing the gap. When I'm running, I imagine that I'm traveling through tubes at 4,000 miles per hour. So there's this, again, this merging between mind and body and spirit that I find, again, rule 5 connecting into rule 6, this I'm going to live without ego, and I'm going to believe in my ability. And that creates space. It just, one can breathe. I feel just those two rules together, like, yes.
Like American highways.
Make America fast again.
Yes. Now, the next one, accept responsibility. You had a quote in there that I have to repeat here because I think this is epic. You can't change what happened in the past, but you can clean up how you feel about it.
Absolutely. I mean, if one goes back to the idea of what we spoke about in the beginning of what's working, what isn't working, and why, all you can do is look and go, okay, what can I do here? What can I do right now? And not dwell on what happened. If I had done this, if I had done that. That's where a lot of the rules, again, they loop back into each other, but they're subtleties, right? Subtle angles. So rather than forgive mistakes, right, where it's like, oh, I need to let this thing go, rule 7 really says, okay, pick up the mantle. And I mean, like, what pops into my head is, let's say, being in a relay race, right? 4 people in a relay race, and right, you're that close to gold, and someone drops the baton, and suddenly it's like, you don't win the race, right? So that idea of being on a team and then going, well, I can't pick up the baton again because I dropped it before and it cost us the race. We were going to get gold. We didn't even finish there. And so rule 7, accept responsibility, is pick up the baton. Don't dwell on what's gone before. Just pick it up and just really be present and show up and do your best. If you do your best, then a lot of trust comes in there, and also a lot of pressure gets lifted because you just say, I'm just going to show up. I'm just going to show up.
Now, the next one, and I don't know if everyone knows how competitive the Laker girls are, but I would put them up there with probably one of the most elite dance teams in the world. The rule you have, the spiritual rule you have, is to aim high. So you're willing to get out and compete at that level. Really is kind of a tribute to this rule and what, the miracle thinking and what you actually tried to accomplish.
It's slightly wild. Yeah, I'd say, there's Laker Girls and there's the Dallas Cowboys as well, right? Those 2 shows. Thank God, like with Dallas Cowboys, I know they annihilate some of the people that would go up for doing the auditions. And with Laker Girls, primarily, it was pretty amazing that I ended up on that show, that I ended up on the season premiere the premiere episode of season 2, and that they put a whole 2-minute segment of storyline for me, because I was the only person that I've ever seen on that show that really couldn't dance properly. But I just, again, this was something for me that went in my head. I mean, I really believed, maybe that's slightly delusional. that I could get through the first round. But here's the thing. What I was aware of is that if that point when I was a child, if I had carried on dancing, if I had gone to stage school, I feel like I have this intuition, this inner knowing that I would have been a really good dancer. But what happened when I went up for the audition, I mean, I've got to tell you, it's not just like being in a dance studio, it's an entire basketball court. And so I was just, when we had to do the routine across the floor, my mind blanked. But I just thought, I'm not going to stop. These cameras there, and there's all these people. And so I just smiled, and I did a couple of like my own little turns and things, and pranced along to the end and of the court. And I remember Lisa Estrada looking across at me and going, oh my gosh, what is she doing? But it was for me it was just to go, if I can do this, I can do anything. For me, it was really about breaking through shame and aiming high. In the practice leading up to that audition, I was going to dance classes with people who were performing on Broadway, with people who were in dance videos with Justin Timberlake and Jennifer Lopez and 50 Cent. And just to move through that fear and do that made me feel very present and very alive. And even though there's this sort of competitive vibe that was there in the dance classes, that it was very supportive and very loving as well. Because I think sometimes competition is a healthy thing because it helps us to aim high. If we don't have competition there, it's like, oh, I'll just sit back. I won't really make an effort. And so aiming high is a great thing because we suddenly realized that we could do more than we thought that we could do.
And I think that's something that we fail to remember a lot of times, because while we might believe in our ability, there's always those times, and there's almost no one out there that can't say at some point in their lives they did something that surprised themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to tell you, going up for Laker Girls, I never would have thought I would have done that in a million years. I never would have thought that I would go into the tube transport industry, that I would be stepping into a realm of into engineering. I've worked in a lot of different industries, from corporate finance to advertising. I've made movies, but engineering wasn't one that I ever put there. And so we have a picture of JFK that is framed with a letter from him that my husband's mum, my mum-in-law, she'd given to us. It's always been with us wherever we've moved from home to home. And it's a picture of Kennedy pointing, saying, hey, you. And I feel a lot of the time when I see that picture, it's as if his spirit's saying to me, aim high, go for it. Anything's possible, right? You shoot for the stars, you land on the moon. And that's a very personal thing. For some people, it might be to have a massive business. For someone else, it might be to run a marathon. I mean, my gosh, I've got to tell you, I haven't run a marathon before. That's something that I haven't done. But that's a big goal, I think. It's a huge accomplishment. For someone else, it's maybe to travel around the world or to help at a local level in their community. That idea of ultimate success and through aiming high is not only a personally transformational thing, but I think it just brings so much inspiration to, you never know who you're going to inspire by going for your dreams and aiming high.
So now if we followed the rules so far, I think the next one actually almost takes care of itself if we have awareness, and that is take the right action.
Absolutely. I mean, here's the thing. The reason why I have the rule, take the right action, is that look, you could read all the diet books in the world. You could go on YouTube and watch hours of how to eat green or watch workout videos. But if you don't go and get yourself to the class, if you don't physically say, oh, hang on, I'm going to put those Krispy Kremes back on the shelf and I'm going to go and pick out some apples instead. This idea of taking the right action is vital to get the results that we want. Action is necessary, and the right action. Otherwise, we are absolutely deluding ourselves. But the first part, just to even being able to get into action, I really believe in just taking a small step and acknowledging oneself for that, because we can't expect massive change overnight. And something really big from a sort of a health and fitness standpoint that now it feels obvious to me, but it really took me years to learn. It was only in the last couple of years I really understood this concept. It's not like we just diet and lose the weight and get in tip-top shape. Then it's about maintenance, because I got in superb shape by early December. And then when we were moving back from Arizona to Los Angeles at Christmas, and I had a lot going on with the lead up to the book, I was just juggling a lot of different things. And within a 3-week period, I started to that level of fitness that I'd reached, and where we were eating super, super clean consistently, I saw how fast one can fall backwards. And then I realized, oh my gosh, it's not about taking the right action once or twice or 3 times. Consistency, consistency, consistency is the key. And if one's consistent, then once in a while, like I know I'm in tune enough with my mind, my body, and my spirit to know when I can indulge in a little bit in certain things. But that taking the right action is a lifestyle choice, whether it's in health and fitness, whether it is in being responsible with one's finances, or whether it's how you're communicating in a relationship with a loved one or in friendships.
And I appreciate that you said the term lifestyle, because I do really kind of think that's the key of all of this, is finding that balance in there that allows you to reach the goals that you can reach, and really aiming high on all this. But at the same time, kind of saying, okay, I'm a human being, and, every once in a while I am going to want to enjoy something and not, feel guilt or shame about it, because I know that it fits into my overall life plan. So I'm cool with that, and we can go with that. Now, the next one, and this is really probably, and I didn't mean it this way, but when I launched the podcast, when I started helping my friends lose weight, it was really kind of about giving back. It's like, okay, I've learned some of these little secrets, many of which you're sharing here in the book, Big Miracles. And I said, I need to give that away. I need to help people learn this stuff. And so I really kind of started this podcast and everything that I do on the basis of service. And so I really appreciated that this was one of your rules.
And also, I think that this idea of being of service, that when someone thinks, well, maybe it's, especially for anyone that sort of is moving into their 50s as well, a lot of the time what I've seen with people is they feel it's too late for stuff, right? I mean, that's why your message is so powerful, because if one starts to make the changes in their 40s, I think that can be profound for setting oneself up for a healthy rest of one's life. And if one's doing it in one's 50s, I mean, that takes courage. And it's sort of like life begins at 40. I think now with life expectancy, it does begin at 50. And even if one's doing in 60s, right, it's not too late.
I'm going to interrupt just a second, because I think actually life begins with the very next breath. And as long as you have one more breath left in your body, you can do something to improve the rest of your life. And so just, you've got that kind of that never give up mindset of saying, look, I can be a little better tomorrow. I can make the next minute better than the last minute. If I can do, and again, it goes back to a lot of these rules, is, if I can get at peace with myself, if I can get a better understanding of myself, if I can just, make the right choice next time, all of those different things are kind of those next things to say, it doesn't matter if I'm 20, if I'm 30, if I'm 101. Everyone has that opportunity. I'm reading another book here, and they called them, instead of calling them old people, they called them Goldners. She uses the term Goldners. And so I'm going to be interviewing her. And that's a term, that's a self-derived term they gave to themselves. It was 4 ladies. They were all in their mid to late 70s. And they call themselves Goldners because they're living in their golden years. And every one of them, from the time they were in their late 60s until and one of them's nearly 80 now, they made these decisions to start working on their balance, their strength, their mobility, and they feel and look and act younger today than they did when they started 10 years ago. So, I think everybody has that opportunity, and it is never, ever, ever too late to start.
So, one of the ways one could apply the rule be of service is be of service to your body. And your body will be of service to you. It will It will take good care of your spirit and house your spirit and help you really move through life and enjoy life. And part of being of service is it starts with self-care, because if you don't take good care of yourself, how can you go and help others?
Now, you've been a great example. Some of the conversations we've had with this podcast of this next one is the getting outside of your comfort zone. But I can't let you just go there and reiterate some of that. You have a miracle box that you've decorated a certain way. And you have a process that you kind of go through to kind of push yourself past some of your fear points and some of those other things. Do you mind taking just a moment to explain your miracle box?
Absolutely. A miracle box, think of it as your mailbox to spirit. If you feel overwhelmed, if you feel scared, if you feel, well, I can't, I feel in my heart I want to do these things, but I don't know how. You go and you get a little notepad or Post-it notes or some paper. I like using a gold Sharpie pen and write down the date. Dear Spirit, for example, Dear Spirit, I want to be able to run my first marathon, and you sign your name. If there's anything blocking me from doing that at a mental, emotional, spiritual level, please remove those blocks. Wrap up the paper, pop it into your box. Now, the box could be something as simple as, I have a client of mine that uses a coffee mug as a miracle box. I have another client of mine who, she took a cardboard box, I think it was a shoe box, and she ended up decorating it with all different travel images of places that she wanted to visit around the world. Right now I have 3 boxes, one for love, one for life, one for money. And I have different images on there, from being in the mountains in Switzerland to gorgeous modern home out on the ocean in Malibu to filmmaking, just all these different things that are on there with different words. And then you can decorate even inside the box. So some of the words that I have on my box are believe, live, love, shine. And so think of it, the miracle box, almost like a 3-dimensional vision board, because you can interact with it. It's something that you can check in and open up the box, say a month, 2 months, 3 months later, and look at what happened. What did you materialize from that box that you weren't sure how you were going to do it, when you were going to do it, what was going to work out? And if something hasn't worked out still, then you just pop it back in there and go, it needs a little bit more time. But a lot of the time you will see certain things that, let's say if someone has anxiety in a relationship or what to do in a next step, by saying, Dear Spirit, help me figure out the next best action to take with this person. I have found in my experience, it's almost like the other person ends up taking an action. So instead of me doing something compulsive and maybe destructive in some way for myself or with that other person, I'm creating enough space using the mailbox, create space for a higher outcome to occur that is more beneficial, not only for myself, but for everyone involved. So yeah, it's a phenomenal tool. You can have a big box, you can have a small box, you could have one box and you could decorate the box with, for example, like in Feng Shui with the Bagua, and you have all these different aspects of life. You can have one side of the box for love, one for money, one for being in the spotlight, one for career, one for family. Or like I said, you could do 8 different boxes. That the sky is the limit.
Now, the final one, which is kind of the grand finale of all this, is, break through to your big miracle. And it's really just about believing it can happen, which is part of what the miracle box is about, of kind of getting outside of your comfort zone. But the now getting to that point where you actually now believe that this is your destiny, this is your path. I think that's kind of the core wraparound to all of this.
Yeah, and also the way the miracle box segues into the breakthrough is, I have found for myself there's periods of time where I would actively be very engaged with the miracle box because I'm working towards that breakthrough. And then once the breakthrough is in motion, like it's happened, but it's sort of, there's the positive aftershocks of it, then I find myself not really, in a way, not needing anything. I'm just more sort of present in my energy, and I'm letting spirit carry me, and I'm following through and taking the actions without feeling resistance. I'm not going, oh, I got to work, to being committed to eating healthy rather than feeling like I'm punishing myself, to showing up in my career, to having energy, to interact on social media. As if I'm not in the right state of mind, that can feel exhausting. And so I find like that idea of the breakthrough is looking at, one of the things that is very helpful is the don'ts. How can you fall backwards from the break? Like you have a breakthrough and then it's like, right, you break through 2 steps forward, And then 3 steps backwards, don't engage in gossip. Don't put yourself second. Don't go to bed late. Don't overeat. Any of these things that you can create your don'ts, so that, again, it's not to hold yourself back, but it's more from an accountability standpoint of what's going to keep you amplifying that breakthrough and then moving beyond that.
Absolutely. So now, while they're out buying this book, and it'll take a day or two for Amazon to deliver it to you, there's a process you talk about in the preface of kind of going through and saying, okay, we need to set our intention of what we want to accomplish with this book. And I think that's that's the really important aspect of this, is realizing that while this is a health and fitness podcast, we've talked about a lot of other areas in your life. Obviously, when I talk about my story, there were other areas besides health and fitness that I needed to improve. I recognized that need and started building the tool set to do that. This book is a shortcut, and not just the rules, but kind of the how-to, because there's a lot of applicable formats and templates and everything else in there. So I really do appreciate you sharing this book with us today, Joanna. If someone wanted to get the book, which they do, where would you like for me to send them?
They can go to Amazon. They can go to Target. They can go to Barnes & Noble. I'm so grateful that the book is everywhere. And yeah, so any of those sources, they can also download. I have some free gift meditations as well at joannagarzilli.com. And they can connect with me on social media as well at Joanna Garzilli. But yeah, thank God for Amazon Prime. That's fast. And I'm really grateful that the book's in Target.
Okay. So this is going to be episode 231. So you can go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/231, and I'll have all the links there so you can connect with Joanna and get her book, Big Miracles. So Joanna, again, thank you so much for being on 40 Plus Fitness.
Thank you, Alan.
Next time on the 40 Plus Fitness podcast, I share 5 ways to build and maintain motivation. Until then, have a happy and healthy day.